Everything to do with funding for a startup is hard. I'm not going to make any excuses, not going to blow sunshine, not going to candy coat it. It is hard. In fact, it is so hard that it can break even the strongest individual. I have seen the most stalwart, battle-tested, hardened founder cave under the pressures related to funding. I have experienced these pains myself. I've gotten to a place where I've been broken. I have been at the total bottom of everything and say, what is the point? Why am I going to go on questioning my existence, wanting it all to end, the lowest of lows? I have been there. And I wanted to start off by sharing this with you because if you are experiencing the same things, you are experiencing the battles that have to do with funding, whether it be fundraising to begin with, getting that traction to do fundraising, whether you're running out of runway and you've got funding issues and you are looking and staring into the abyss, I can relate to you, and this video is specifically for you. Let's share what you can do and how you should be thinking to ensure that funding for a startup does not break you, that you will be able to say, funding, you will not break me. Before we continue, my name is Ed Kang. If we met before, welcome back. Thanks for stopping by. As always, use the chapter markers to skip right to the video. If we haven't met, I'm a 7-time funded founder with 2 exits. That's just a fancy way of saying I failed a bunch of times to your benefit because I like to use YouTube videos like this and my channel to try and help founders, especially early stage founders, raising that funding, avoid some of the catastrophic mistakes that I've made. Not to say you're not going to make the mistakes, but I'm going to try to make your life a little bit easier. I'm also the Chief Strategy Officer for Startups.com, where I help hundreds of founders. If you're part of the community, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it. While everybody's here, do the YouTube thing. Like, comment, subscribe. I would love to hear your feedback, especially on this topic of how difficult and how backbreaking, mentally and emotionally debilitating funding can be. Let's talk about it. In order to prevent everything to do with funding breaking you, you want to understand that there are going to be 5 emotions that you will deal with. And I'm going to walk through each one and explain to you how you can handle it, share some of my experiences, and we can commiserate together and most importantly, support one another on this journey. The first is going to be denial. And you're going to recognize that these are the 5 stages of grief, but I'm going to break each emotion down for you because the first thing that happens is you get caught up in your own denial. You get a piece of feedback, an investor says something to you, the market says something to you, and you go into denial. The first thing, because you want to be positive and optimistic, but a lot of times you're trapped in your own cognitive bias and you think, no, that's not going to happen, especially not happen to me. It might happen to everybody else, but it's not going to happen to me. That is denial to the T. One of the problems with success is that founders like me think that I can just repeat that success over and over again. And this is not a humble brag. This is something that's actually been very detrimental to my career as a startup founder because my first startup, I started it, raised funding, then I sold the startup a few years later, and it was off to the races. I got acqui-hired by a big family office, and I got a swanky job. And yes, my investors got a return, so they were looking at me saying, hey, what's the next thing we can work on? I got a reputation as a founder with the ability to create exits, to create ROI for investors, and I took that cash, put it in my pocket, and I lived large and in charge for a bunch of years, just enjoying my life, thinking that, oh yeah, I'll just go work in the next startup, pick it up again, and I'll recreate that success. Venture after venture, my startups failed, but it started off with the very startup that acquired mine that failed, and I had to really look at myself and start to think, okay, what are the signs? What is this pointing to in terms of all this failure? But I was in denial so many steps. I kept plunking money in. I kept spending money that I didn't have. I kept talking with investors, raising funding for startups that eventually would fail. And pretty soon the shine off of my first success start to wear off because I was stuck in my own head. I was in denial. It was my own cognitive bias, and I didn't believe the reality, what people were saying to me. And that's because I had these rose-colored glasses on or these blindfolds, this total blind spot when it came to my own weaknesses and my own success. And I see founders do this all the time. I try and tell you all out there the reality of what's going on in the market. And I had this happen just today. I had a founder just look at me like, you are the one thinking this. This is just your opinion. And I said to myself, it's not my opinion. It's reality of what we're dealing with. I experience this on the front lines all the time. But the founders that are in denial and say, no, that's not me. No, your feedback's not relevant. No, this is absolutely going to work out. I'm too smart to fail. These are some of the fallacies that founders fall into. And that sets you up to really spiral out of control and get to that place where you are broken because your expectations, whether it be fantasies, whether it be illusions of grandeur, your your delusions. I don't know what it is, but we all have them. We all have blind spots, and we're all in some form of denial. Just accept it. Get to the point you're going to see by the end of this where acceptance is the key. Accept that you are going to experience different levels of denial depending on who you are, where you come from, your conditioning, your background. Don't be one of those founders that says, that's not me. Just say, okay, I'm just going to accept the fact that it is me, it's possible, and then you'll be better suited to deal with all the ups and downs, all the heartache, the insufferable, thankless process having to do with funding for your startup. The next thing you're going to experience is anger. And I experienced this so many times. In fact, it was this past Friday. I was experiencing so much anger as an advisor towards other founders, just confessing, being straightforward with you, that I was angry, I was judgmental, I had no compassion, no empathy, and I literally had to step away from everything that I was doing and take some time off because I get angry just as much as everybody else does. You might get angry with your co-founders. You're especially going to get angry with investors, ones that ignore you or don't give you proper feedback or maybe make you jump through a bunch of hoops for a total waste of time. Anger is an appropriate emotion when things are not going your way. When you experience things that say, this is not right for me, you will experience appropriate anger. But if you let that anger fester into rage, if you let that emotionally leak into every other aspect of your startup, you're going to be in big trouble. Anger comes from our judgment. And often it comes from this entitlement that we think the world should go the way that we want it to, especially if we're raising funding. I understand disappointment. I have founders contact me all the time that I've been trying to help raise funding with investor relations, and I do my best. And they come and they say, I'm disappointed that no investors are biting off. I really need that funding. And that is totally okay. If you're in that situation, I have empathy and compassion for you because I've sat on your side of the table. I know what it's like to, again, stare into the abyss, that void, not knowing what's going to happen, and have that fear start to slowly creep in that everything is going to cave. But what's not okay is letting that emotion leak and getting inappropriately angry with the people who are trying to help you. I have founders get angry with me all the time. And you're probably thinking, wow, Ed, who would ever get angry with you? Well, if you hung around me long enough, you know that despite my best intentions, sometimes I come across the wrong way and founders get angry with me. A lot has to do with their own reactions. Maybe they're triggered, and that is okay. Everybody is allowed and is worthy of their own agency and sovereignty to experience their complex emotions. But allowing anger to spill out and taking it out on everybody else or blaming the world and getting a victim mentality is not okay. It is going to slowly build up inside of you and get so dense that it becomes inert that you cannot see the forest through the trees. You will not see reality because you're going to be blinded by that rage. You're going to fly off the handle. And if you're doing that to the people around you who are trying to help you or support you, how do you think investors are going to take you or your customers? You cannot be driven by anger. It's the dark side of the force, as Yoda would say. Don't deal with anger in the same way that everybody else does by stuffing it down. Process that anger and tell people that you trust, I'm feeling angry for this and this and this. Then try and find that point of compassion and relate to people. Look for the relationships that bring you joy, that make you say, all right, I know this situation made me angry, but I appreciate all these other people around me, what I'm doing, and that's what I had to do. I had to spend time with the people that I appreciated, the other people at startups.com, the CEO, Will, he reached out to me and said, hey, I'm worried about you, let's talk, and that just made me feel better. So you need those support systems, but don't fall into the trap of anger. Next, you will start to bargain. After you go through that denial, then you start getting angry. You start negotiating and say, well, what about this and what about that? And you start working out your plans. And rightfully so. You're a founder. You are relentlessly resourceful. You're creative. You want to be optimistic. And you want to figure out, hey, how do I take the side door on this? How do I rejig this and change that up so we can get to the outcome? That's your creative way of solving a lot of problems. But if you start bargaining with yourself and other people to no end, it is futile. There's no point because a no is a no. You can't convince people to then say yes, especially an investor. If they don't want to fund you, don't chase them down and try to convince them because you'll be wasting your energy. Bargaining in the wrong situation is a waste of time. Negotiating is a whole other thing when all the parties are there and say, let's compromise and work this out. But trying to bargain in a one-way interaction, basically to yourself or to a brick wall where you're not going to get a response, is a complete waste of time. To avoid this trap, you want to stay in your circle of control and influence versus your circle of concern. Only try to negotiate and bargain with the things that you can control, not everybody else's opinions. In other words, stop trying to bargain or navigate navigate the things that are out of your direct control. Go and bargain with the things that you can control. Make a list. I can control the outcome here. I have direct influence, or no, this is just my concern, just my opinion. Everybody else is entitled to have their opinion. I'm not going to be able to bargain my way out of it. And if you stay focused on your locus of control, a lot of great things start to happen in your brain. You start to get regulated. Short-term memory centers start to light up. Executive control starts to get better and better. You begin feeling optimistic and you become more productive, creative. You start to see things that maybe you haven't seen before because you're in this place where you are only focusing on your locus of control, and that lights up your brain. There's a neurochemical cocktail that happens that makes you a better founder if you stop trying to bargain in your circle of concern and you focus directly on the circle of control and influence, and everything's a negotiation there because you have the ability to exert the power dynamics necessary to make that change happen, where in other instances you don't have that opportunity. Sometimes you just have to let the deal go and walk the other way and say, I will live to fight another day. I cannot tell you the amount of times that we have walked away from a deal and said, this is just not going to be for us. We're not going to change the parameters on it. And even though we could spend all this time dealing with the sunk cost fallacy, saying we've gotten this far, we need to press through or else it's going to be too much of a loss, I've said, no, I'm not going to bargain anymore. I like to say I'm not going to negotiate with terrorists. Sometimes some customers, clients, they're like terrorists and you're not going to win. Maybe you can still get the deal, but it's the wrong yes. You want to avoid that, and I say we're just moving on. But other times, the terrorist is you. It's within yourself, and you're holding yourself to a standard, or you're threatening yourself, or you got some crazy thoughts going in your head, and you say, no, I'm not going to bargain with those voices in my head. I'm going to walk away. I'm going to have peace with this, and that's the important thing to get you to these next steps, because you're going to need resilience to deal with the emotions that are going to be coming. Sadness is next. Depression. You'll go into a bottomless pit and you'll feel like you are sinking. I have been there. One of the worst experiences of my life was I was in China and I was lying on my bed on the 27th floor or some floor of a swanky downtown apartment in Beijing, China. The view was gorgeous, but I didn't have 2 cents to rub together. I didn't know how I was going to pay my mortgage. And I thought to myself, this is the saddest situation ever. Here I am. I'm supposed to be some successful startup founder and I'm completely broke. I do not know what's happening. And it was this weird cognitive dissonance of being in this apartment that the investors set me up in, but we were not landing any deals. We weren't getting anywhere, and my family was worried. My mental health was going down. I was in a very depressed moment. I went to a dark place, and I started thinking very, very dark thoughts. Sadness is the emotion in your brain saying, I've lost something or I'm going to lose something. But then it can get toxic, and your brain can say to you, I am a loser. I don't deserve to be a founder. You might be dealing with imposter syndrome on the tails of that. I understand. I've been there, and it's sad. I've been sad after I've lost a deal or I've lost employees or I've watched all the money drain out of the bank account because of some unexpected expense. I've lost something, and after I go through all the other stages, I get to this point where I'm sad and then I get depressed. The worst part is sadness can turn into apathy. You literally do not care and give a flying piece of shit about anything whatsoever. And that is a really dark place because founders by nature, as I've been saying over and over again, are optimistic, are self-actualized, action-oriented, have a proclivity to execute things and say, I'm going to get up no matter how many times I get punched in the face. But after a while, you keep taking those on the chin, yeah, you're going to deal with sadness, and that's okay. There are times I go put my head in the lap of my wife and say, I'm a terrible founder. I'm leading our family to destruction. We're going to be living out on the street in a cardboard box. I suck completely. I am a loser. I have confessed that to my wife, and she thankfully has learned just to stroke my hair, not to try and fix my problems, and say, tell me all about it. I'm going to commiserate with you, empathize. I'm going to show you compassion. And that gives me that emotional capacity to say, someone's listening to me, and they give me their emotional capacity, and I start to get myself out of the hole. And how you get out of sadness is you take action on one thing. Don't think about it. Don't get into all the other circumstances. Don't go all the way to the final destination of it. Don't go too far ahead on that chessboard and all the chess moves that you have to make. Just say, I'm just going to do one thing. Doesn't matter what it is. I'm going to get up. I'm going to go work out. I'm going to go talk to a customer. I'm going to go change this. I'm going to try something different. I'm going to research, have a conversation with ChatGPT. I don't know what it is. Just do something. If you find yourself depressed and frozen in place, or you're stuck in molasses, you're like sinking and you can't breathe, don't think about anything else. Just do one action. And then most importantly, talk to somebody else, share how you're feeling, not someone who's going to get on you and start to try and fix your problems and tell you what you should have done. That is going to just empathize with you, give you that compassion, and then say, I'm going to do this one thing. I'd love to have your support and encouragement. And then you're going to get through that sadness. And you are so close to the last part where we just punch through. And this is where you want to stay and live as a founder, especially if you are fundraising. Especially if you're dealing with funding challenges, here's where you want to be. Acceptance. That's when you have this piece that everything is going to be all right in the world, no matter what is going on. You're like one of those ducks, and underneath you are churning away, trying to move and trying to stay afloat. But on top, you are completely peaceful. You're floating there, and you're just enjoying the acceptance that comes with that piece of knowing that things are going to work out. Now, don't get me wrong. You might be on the complete edge of utter disaster. I've been on that razor's edge of absolute catastrophe so many times. So those all-in moments as a founder. I get it. I've been there, done that, have the t-shirt, have the therapy bills as the receipts to prove it. But this goes back to your sphere of concern and your sphere of control. What you can influence, you accept that anything outside of that, that's not your jam. That's not your deal. You don't have to worry about it. In fact, even giving it an ounce of energy is going to take away from the return on investment that you can get. There's a cost of opportunity that you will pay by not focusing on the things that you can't control. And you get to the point where you're peacefully accepting that customers are going to act a certain way, that revenue is going to happen a certain way if you do this, if you do that, with the things that you can control. But most importantly, investors are going to react a certain way, and you have no control over it whatsoever. I'm not saying that you have to agree. I tell founders all the time, and everybody else in my life, just because I accept what you're saying and your opinion doesn't mean that I agree with it. You can disagree with investors all day long and say that was a dumb idea by passing on my startup. I'll show you, but you have to accept it. The more that you accept that the world is doing things for you rather than doing things to you, that is a point, a piece, that is a mindset, a shift that you can make. And the more that you accept that, the more powerful you will be as a founder. And I'm not trying to get all meta spiritual and woo-woo on you right here, but it does make sense that those founders that are in a place of acceptance, like accepting customer feedback or investor feedback, and they put themselves in a place of peace and they focus on their locus of control, they perform. The science is there, the data is there. I could line up a whole bunch of founders who just absolutely accept that's the way the world works. That's how everybody's going to react in one way or the other, and they don't have to agree. They're not so agreeable that they say, okay, now I'm going to change everything. I'm just going to roll over and totally give up. No, they're disagreeable. They say, I accept what you're saying. I accept what you're thinking. I accept how you're responding, but I disagree and I will show you. And then they go into action. They start coding away. They say, all right, let me show you. And they get a little bit of a chip on their shoulder saying, all right, I have the right mindset that if I can't figure it out right now, I accept it, but I will grow into it. I will learn what it takes. It's the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. Go check out the book Mindset by Dr. Dweck. It's a great read, exactly what I'm talking about. Those of you out there with the growth mindset, if you combine that with acceptance, you will be so powerful as a founder, and that's the success that I want to share with you. If you're part of this channel and you are fighting every single day through those funding battles, let's continue to do it together. I want to hear from you. Let me know what you think. That's it for this video. Thanks for spending time with me. Watch some of the other videos that I put on the screen, and I'll see you in the next one.